So I'm delighted to be here. I should have said a lot of things about the brave new world of automatic enforcement that Fred was describing to us in the DMCA, but I'm afraid I'm going to talk about something completely different with the purpose of inspiring this group that I had the pleasure of joining this afternoon, that is discussing a vision of a next generation of copyright law. And I guess this is really an inspiring challenge. I guess in facing this challenge, we need to address a preliminary issue, that is our policy goals for the digital environment, what it is that we try to achieve, and whether the copyright law, as we know it today, not particular rules, but the copyright regime as a property regime, is appropriate for achieving these goals. Copyright law definitely goes through fundamental crisis. It is reflected in the piles of litigation and reform initiatives and public debates that we see around the world. Back in the 90s, a lot of the stakeholders were mourning the death of copyright, particularly because of the ease of making multiple copies and distributing them online. But as it turned out, the digital crisis of copyright goes beyond the enforcement challenges, how to prevent peer-to-peer and how to make intermediaries to bring them in compliance with the law. And copyright has proven to be an effective tool at the hands of some of the players in the online environment. At the same time, however, digital technology has changed the way we create and distribute cultural works, and therefore it requires us to reconsider some of the fundamental justification for copyright and to critically examine how the toolkit that is provided by copyright law is shaping this emerging technological environment. So what I'd like to do today is to to focus this presentation on a particular aspect of the digital environment, that is user-generated content and social production. I'll explain why I think it is challenging for copyright law and why I believe the legal regime should cultivate this type of creation by individual users, small businesses, and communities. And finally, I'll try to briefly outline what I think should be the basis for legal reform. But first, let me say a few words about this changing nature of production. In the past couple of years, we witnessed the rise of user-generated content. The Time magazine selected the user, you and us, as the person of the year in 2006. We have come to recognize that bloggers and not only news organizations and large media companies can report and also analyze the news. We witnessed the flourishing of fan culture and remix culture. We learned from Manuel Castel that mass self-communication can promote freedom and autonomy, and also that user-generated content and crowdsourcing can create new values for companies and increase efficiency. There is also the rise of social production, which is a little bit of a different phenomena. Clay Shirky describes the emergence of large-scale collaboration without any formal structure, and Yochai Benkler explains to us how digital technology made it possible to shift from the industrial production of content into social production, which takes place outside the organizational structure of firms and the state. This shift to social production is a very significant moment for the history of copyright law. Copyright, especially during the 20th century, was the legal regime which was shaped to serve the needs of mass production. The mass production of content. Corporations were the major producers of content, the film industry, the television industry, the recording industry, and of course, right at the beginning, the book publishers. This industry required economic incentives in order to invest in the production of content, and copyright law provided the incentives by a set of exclusive rights to exploit the work. As we move to social production, we should ask ourselves whether copyright law is still useful to cater this creative environment, and what types of governing structures can facilitate this type of content production by individuals and communities. So, what is social production? We know it when we see it. We have some classic examples, free software, and of course, Wikipedia. But what I'd like to do is to point out a couple of features rather than providing a full definition of social production that would describe what make this type of production social. So one thing is social motivation. And here, when we shift from production by firms to production by individuals, this environment of user created content brings to the surface a whole set of non-monetary incentives. People create to express themselves, to satisfy their passion, to build online reputation, or simply for fun. They also create for social motivation and other oriented motivation that is linked to the community in which they create. That is the need to get recognition by a particular community, self-expression, that is an engagement with the particular community or a particular audience, the wish to feel part of a group or to be affiliated by a community, reciprocity with particular collaborators, and the commitment to a group or to a particular cause. A second element or feature that is common to social production is collaboration. The web facilitates coordination of production among mega groups of actors, not simply intimate groups of users. And this collaboration within a crowd rather than a group that has some institutional structure is one feature that we need to pay attention to. This may be different for small groups and large groups. We may see collaboration that is ad hoc or continues over time, so there is a variety here. A third feature of social production relates to the output of this type of activity, that is the social capital that is generated, the institutions that are produced by this type of activity, the sense of belonging and the social norms, and the type of sometimes dispute resolution mechanisms that are provided here. Now, the fact that user-generated content and social production are made possible by the digital environment does not necessarily mean that we need to encourage them. So one question that we need to ask ourselves is whether this is a good thing. And here there are a few reasons to believe that we actually should encourage this type of activity or development. One set of reasons has to do with efficiency. The argument here is that this type of decentralized, bottom-up production is simply more efficient than production that is organized by firms. And here is the classic examples for this type of harvesting of new ideas that may push forward innovation is, of course, open source. Another reason related to efficiency, and another argument that would support this type of non-proprietary production is that this type of production is superior because it facilitates access. It enables wide access when the output of this production is released. But there is another set of normative issues that are related to that support social production and user-generated content, and I think that we should pay attention to this aspect as well. And this aspect has to do with free speech and civil rights. Our public discourse is mediated currently primarily by the mass media. But mass media suffers from major deficiencies. It is accused of reflecting the interests of media owners. It is an industry that has to generate profits through the sale of content, and therefore often targeting the lowest common denominator. And there is, of course, a major concern regarding media concentration and the lack of sufficient diversity. On this background, when we look at the information era, user-generated content may offer an attractive alternative. It is a shift from the one-to-many into the many-to-many self-communication, and therefore it entails some promises for voicing an authentic opinion of more individuals, providing opportunities to participate as individuals and as communities, and sometimes even more effectively as crowds. It facilitates more diversity of opinions and enables speech that is cleaned from commercial interests. As we witnessed the recent events of WikiLeaks in the past 2 weeks, these events may suggest even that investigating journalism could be provided by bloggers, and that news outlets that are generated outside commercial interest influence are actually better for facilitating more information, regardless of your opinion of whether this information should have been posted or not. So these advantages of user-generated content in social production arise from the fact that it reflects a decentralized and open mechanisms for producing content that is divorced from the market principles which govern mass production of content. When we design our legal policies, we should keep in mind these advantages. So from a legal perspective, the question is how to design policies that promote these particular advantages. And before we explore some of these alternatives, it is necessary to consider why copyright law currently does not support social production and user-generated content. And here I'd like to focus on the main reason, which is exclusivity. And exclusivity is actually the tool by which copyright law provides incentives to create. Authors are granted with a set of exclusive rights, and therefore every potential user is required to acquire a license. This enables the owners to negotiate a fee for use, which falls under this bundle of copyright. This legal framework, which requires a license for each and every use, is not friendly to amateur users. Amateurs who don't exploit the work commercially cannot cover the cost of identifying the copyright owner, negotiating a license, and often paying the license fee. Amateur users also lack the business structure that is required to commercially exploit their own work by selling copies and licenses. To be sure, users, authors, may sometimes want to benefit from their work. Sometimes these benefits take the form of acquiring attention and non-monetary benefits that I listed before, but sometimes amateur authors may also want to get a share in the revenues that are generated by the distribution of their content. But licensing as a mechanism for acquiring this share is simply not functional for this type of authors or creators. A licensing regime is also not useful for collaboration. The need to acquire a license is often an obstacle for collaboration and for collaborative efforts, which require coordination and some mutual accountability among the group of creators. Exclusivity over content may also undermine some of the social cohesion among the group of collaborators and within the community, since each of the contributing authors can claim some exclusivity over their micro contribution to the overall task. Another issue is that the use of exclusive rights over content is now being used in the online environment to gain market dominance and control over information markets. And here, I think we need to pay attention to the fact that user-generated content is indeed decentralized in the way content is being generated. And in this sense, it reflects a distributed mechanism for content production. But all this content is facilitated by online platforms such as social networks, online aggregators, search engines. You asked me before why they should be regulated. Communication carriers, mobile phone companies, and online retailers. These online platforms raise new concerns regarding the competitiveness, but also the openness of future information market. So copyright law is now applied in this environment to reduce competition among online platforms. And one recent example is, for instance, the e-book wars between Apple and Amazon, where publishers were refusing to license their copyrighted books for Kindle, as they were trying to fix the retail price of e-books. Without this content, of course, there is no market for e-books readers, and Amazon, of course, realized that, and therefore recently called consumers to boycott e-books with the publisher's fixed price. Copyright was used in this incident to tie together content and the hardware that makes this available. Such lock-in is precisely what enabled iTunes to become a dominant outlet in the market for music distribution. And I can't resist a final example related to our host here, that is Google. And when you think about the Google book settlement, It also demonstrates how copyright in books may create a dominant position of a platform that makes them available. The digitization of books by Google involved two major costs: the cost of scanning the books and the cost of copyright clearance. After Google was sued in the United States by the publishers and the Authors Guild, a settlement was reached that is now pending approval by the court in the United States. And according to this settlement, if it is approved, Google will receive a license to make scanned books available in digital format, and that license would make it very difficult for any competitor to arise in this area in the foreseen future. A finding of fair use or any other general right to use that, to digitize these books without a license, would have opened the door for competition by other companies, by national libraries, or any NGOs that would crowd scan these books and create an alternative to this hosting facility. So while user-generated content and social production is decentralizing the production process and support more open and diverse content environment, exclusive rights over content may facilitate centralized control and market dominance. A final point I would like to make regarding the limits of copyrights before I move on to talk about some solution has to do with governance. And here, a major problem with the current copyright law regime is that it does not define the rights and duties among collaborators and therefore fail to provide an organizational structure for social production. What rights, for instance, should each of the users have in the outcome as a whole? What rights should they have in each of their own contributions? What privileges they have in the contribution of others? Can they change it, edit it, transfer it, or distribute it outside the collaborative effort? For instance, if Wikipedia, which is the output of large-scale mega collaboration, can now facilitate printed versions of derivatives of Wikipedia, the question is whether, how do we decide whether to allow this, whether we can license a publisher to print books that are based on Wikipedia, such as the initiative that was proposed here a couple of years ago in Germany. Do we need to ask each of the contributors, is it sufficient to rely on the terms of use? What if the original license did not predict such new exploitation of the joint work? And how do we make sure that people will continue to contribute to this collaborative enterprise? Another example of this type of problems could be was reflected in the migration of Wikipedia from the GFDL license to Creative Commons attribution share-alike license. The process of switching from one license to another was very complicated legally, but also created a lot of controversies within that community. So large-scale collaborations are possible in the digital environment, but in order to manage them, to govern them, what is necessary is more than simply coordinate the actions of people, but actually engage in some sort of collective action that would allow the participants to reach a binding agreement that would bind all the members of the group regarding the exploitation of the joint effort. And the limit of copyright in this context is that it does not offer any solution to this type of problems, because as a property regime, it actually manages the rights of owners with strangers and doesn't provide any solutions for managing rights among authors and among owners. So what are some of the implications for copyright policy? How should it promote the advantages of user-generated content and social production that especially those related to the decentralized, non-commercial production? So to promote this type of environment and facilitate participation by individuals, we need to secure a right of authors, users, to switch between some sort of commercial and non-commercial participation. Otherwise, the commercial use of works is taking over the non-commercial acts of generating content. And at the same time, we want to encourage users to participate in social production and keep the right to get some sort of revenue if they want to engage in commercial exploitation. Now, one way to achieve this type of switch between commercial and non-commercial is to secure a right for a share, not an exclusive right to license the work, but simply a right to a revenue, a share in the benefits that are generated by a work, so that no license will be required for using a work that was already published, and everyone will be free to make any personal non-commercial use of such work, except that once the work generates some income, these users will need to share this, a certain percentage that is fixed. It could be fixed by regulation as a percentage, not as a fixed price, with the original author. A second goal is to secure the competitiveness of open information flows and the ability of users and users' authors to switch in between online platforms. And for that reason, you need to have some competition between platforms and not to allow the use of copyright in order to prevent such competition. A third goal is, of course, to facilitate some governance of the collaborative efforts, and here are some concrete solutions could facilitate some actions by the communities by using something like EULA, like an end-user license agreement, and some default rules that should protect the community assets, the output of the joint efforts on the one hand, but at the same time will secure the rights of the individual users to opt in and out such collaborative effort. Now, with the vision that this type of engagement in social production is going to take an increasing part of our time and of our activities, the rights of individual users in this type of communal efforts should also be protected. And here I think that increasingly we should look up to public law and not necessarily to private law and contract law for providing some solutions, so that default rules could be listed by the law, but regulation of some sort, not necessarily copyright, should actually be used to scrutinize this type of private ordering, of contracts adopted by communities. And this type of regulation should secure particularly two rights of end users participating in this type of collaborative effort, that is voice and exit. The voice, namely the ability to participate in any rulemaking process that is undertaken by a community of collaborators in a meaningful way, and that could be either by voting or by suggesting some sort of rules for the transparency of the rules and also the changes that are introduced to such governing rules. And the second right is the ability to leave the platform and transfer some of the content and data that was accumulated in that platform and use it on a different platform, like shifting from Wikipedia to a different encyclopedia, that online encyclopedia that we may want to envision, quitting Facebook and moving to a different social media platform with the content and data, not necessarily deleting the content and data that was accumulated by that other platform. These rules are important because there is a natural incentive for communities to maintain rules, governing rules for their joint effort that would serve the needs of each of the participants, because every community of collaborators or any social media platform that facilitates such a community has an interest in keeping this community of creators alive and engaged in creating more and more content, because that's the business model. At the same time, these rights of voice and exit should safeguard the rights of individual contributors against a potential tyranny by the crowd, right? I mean, that's there is not always consistency between the interest of the community as a whole and the interest of each of the individual users. So if we think overall of this project that was undertaken by this collaborative effort to design a new reform for copyright, and especially with the ambitious target of thinking of a legal reform for the year 2035, I encourage us all to rethink the fundamental toolkit of copyright. That is the idea that you need to license. And to do that, to try to be courageous enough to question it, without thinking that we need to give up an entire business model together with it. So I'm going to stop here.